What does Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 hide from the player off camera in Home Sweet Home? Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 is full of gruesome locations that force the player to solve puzzles, navigate ever-changing mazes, and evade the nightmarish creatures that lurk within. And what could be more terrifying than exploring the seemingly endless halls of an abandoned orphanage? Today we'll be taking a closer look at Home Sweet Home as we break down how this area functions behind the scenes, including the many encounters you will inevitably have with Catnap. We've got lots to cover, so I hope you enjoyed today's look behind the scenes of Chapter 3 Deep Sleep. So before jumping in, I'll quickly recap this portion of the game as it gets pretty confusing. So after arriving at Home Sweet Home, you enter the doors of this gloomy facility and head downstairs. Heading through the basement door, you're met with this red fog, and proceeding onward, the door behind you disappears. You're forced to walk down this massive set of stairs that leads into this maze of hallways. As you continue walking through these halls, the building around you begins changing unpredictably. You're not alone either, as Catnap can be seen stalking the player throughout this labyrinth. Eventually, you reach this area where the hallway loops a few times, and continuing onward ultimately leads to this hospital area. After putting this tape into the VCR, Huggy Wuggy's face appears on screen alongside an unnerving narration, and we can watch as her face becomes more and more distorted. Huggy will then crawl the TV itself before giving chase, ultimately jump scaring the player. We'll be recapping the rest of this area a bit later, but for now, let's brighten things up. So, rewinding time, I want to take a closer look at the building's exterior. Though it's definitely a bit bigger on the inside, the outside of this facility appears to just be a smaller two-story building. I was curious if there was anything hidden behind it in this blocked off area, but unfortunately there's nothing to be found. Taking a look inside, we'll find that the door we eventually head through downstairs does not actually lead anywhere, at least not yet. When the player walks downstairs and activates the loading zone, they are moved to a completely separate map. The Playcare complex is no longer present, and we can see the massive maze of halls now loaded in. The doorway I had mentioned earlier leads to this room with a large staircase. Although when viewing this space from a different angle, you'll notice that the stairs simply comes to an end just out of the player's sight. You would likely never see this though, because when entering this area, a cloud of red gas will envelop you as you're teleported to a nearly identical room just off to the side. Although these areas look mostly the same, there's no longer a door behind you, which forces you to move into the twisted maze ahead. Now, as we make our way through this labyrinth, Catnap can be seen multiple times making their way through these halls. Typically, we can only see them from far away though, and by the time we reach them, they are nowhere to be seen. If we move the camera through this level, we can actually find Catnap in each of the locations they are set to appear in. We can use this as an opportunity to get another look at them as well. Catnap is a super tall, lanky, stuffed purple cat. Although that doesn't inherently sound bad, we can see their ribcage and spine outlined through their purple toy exterior. Their mouth is stretched wide open and is completely black and empty. Their eyes are similar in appearance, aside from their small, ring-shaped pupils. Ugh. It is not a good day to be a cat person. As we come to our first encounter with Catnap, I place the camera in the hallway where they're standing and then trigger their walking animation, which for some reason resulted in them walking through the wall. As it turns out, this specific model is never actually seen by the player. This model is placed here to cast a shadow on the wall, and when the player gets near, they can see the shadow moving out of sight. It's a neat little trick to make this area's atmosphere that much spookier. Now, something else I noticed is that when going left in the first two hallways, walking through the third intersection results in the game skipping. At first, I thought this had to do with the level loading in as we move forward, but as it turns out, we're actually being warped to the hallway opposite to us. No matter how many times you try walking through here, you will always be teleported back to this same location. You can actually watch this happen in real time by turning around when hitting the trigger. Just up ahead, a phone can be heard ringing from somewhere in the building, and after following the sound and approaching the phone itself, Ollie then tells us to run. After turning around, we'll catch a glimpse of Catnap staring us down from beyond the door. And viewing this from the hallway, we can see that the moment the player turns around, they'll slink back into the hall before unloading entirely. Before moving on from this particular area, something else occurs here that you may have missed at first. As we enter this room for the first time, the hallway to our left comes to a wall, but it doesn't really. This wall is actually placed here temporarily, and as soon as we reach the phone, it will be unloaded, giving us access to the rest of the level. We can watch from a different angle as we move forward, and we'll see that this same segment is loaded back in the moment we enter this corridor. This trick is used in various places throughout this location, and we can even find some of these walls stored beneath the map for the same purpose. Now, as I continue to explore this map, I found two versions of Catnap that I didn't encounter during my first playthrough of this chapter. There are a couple doors throughout this map that are barely cracked open, and when looking inside, you can see Catnap glaring at you before they walk backwards into the shadows. When viewing this with the lights on, you'll see that there is a large rectangle placed in front of them, just above their head. When the player looks inside, this object will slowly move downwards, obscuring our view of this horrific creature. There's also a jump scare that takes place just ahead, where we can hear something slamming against this door. And although we can see it being moved, there is nothing beyond it, and the door simply leads out of bounds. Near the end of this map, we'll have yet another encounter with Catnap, where they watch us from the end of this hallway, and when approached, they will walk out of sight and vanish. This leads us to one of this map's more interesting mechanics, a hallway that turns into a seemingly endless loop. Just beneath the corner of this map, we can find two separate walls placed out of bounds. As we walk through this bend, the corridor we entered from will be blocked off using one of these wall segments, effectively creating the illusion that the map itself has changed around us. After rotating around this area a couple of times, the wall on the other side of this loop will be moved beneath the map, and the hallway leading to the end of the level becomes accessible. But not before we have one more encounter with Catnap, this time walking across the hallway in front of us before disappearing once out of sight. While I love breaking games, I also love destroying people in games as well. And with the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder, you can claim victory for yourself. Ever want to jump into battle and take control of a tank, plane, ship, or helicopter? The intense combat of War Thunder allows you to jump into the rich community of over 70 million players and battle it out in grand PvP combat with over 2,500 usable vehicles. And if you're a history buff like me, you'll appreciate the attention to detail of every vehicle, even down to an X-ray mode to see how you're specifically defeated in the game. War Thunder is free to play on PC and consoles, and features a damage model where individual components of your vehicle can be targeted, which reflects the consequences if that part were struck in real life. And if you click my link in the description below, new players or players who haven't played in the last 6 months will receive 3 premium vehicles, a 50% experience and income booster, 2 advanced vehicles for rent, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account time, among other things available for a limited time only. So claim it now. Now, before we move on, I want to show something else that I found out of bounds, and that is this weird Hairless Catnap. This model is placed a long way from the rest of the map, and appears to be lacking the fur used on its standard model. The texture applied to this model has what looks like desaturated purple fur on it, but it's still super unsettling nonetheless. This is similar to what happens to Catnap when climbing through the vents at the start of Chapter 3. Finally, before moving on, we can have a look at this hospital area. This small concrete room has a few hospital beds and some curtains, as well as a TV and VCR. After putting in the VHS tape, a creepy analog horror-styled Huggy appears on the TV screen. But I was curious where he comes from when crawling out of the television. It turns out they're always present on this map. It's just incredibly hard to see them. So just behind the television, we can see a ton of small particles just kind of floating here in the void. They are the same colors as Huggy Wuggy, and when viewed from the right angle, they look to be shaped in a T-pose. I almost didn't notice them at first because of how small they are, but the issue fixes itself in just a moment. Inside the TV itself, we can find a floating red square, and from this angle, we can watch as Huggy begins forming from the broken particles seen floating out of bounds. They slowly reconstruct as they make their way forward, almost like the thousands of pixels from the TV are giving shape to this creature. Watching as they crawl out the TV is super unnerving, especially because this version of Huggy is a lot more monstrous than the original. Something a bit odd though is that when Huggy Wuggy jump scares you, 2 grab pack guns can be seen floating just beneath the map with their hoses clipping up through the floor. I'm not certain as to why these are here, since to my knowledge, the player isn't given access to the grab pack for this section of the level. They're also fairly large compared to their typical size. Just before Huggy bites the player, their mouth stretches wide open as their face contorts into this heart shape, making for one terrifying jump scare. After regaining consciousness, the player finds themselves in the entrance to Home Sweet Home once more. The red gas is no longer present, which means we're now able to enter the living quarters beyond the doors in front of us. After jumping into a hole in the floor, you grab a gas mask, which allows you to walk through the fog unhindered. As you make your way through this location, you'll use these toy cars to break through obstructions while completing various puzzles in order to obtain batteries required to power the door to the generator room. We're not alone though, as Catnap can be seen watching us from a vent as we navigate the house. After collecting the final battery, a door is opened in the center room which gives us access to the backup generator area, presenting you with yet another electricity puzzle. Once the backup generator has been restored, we'll be attacked by Kissy Missy when leaving the house, only to be saved by Poppy. We'll then take a quick elevator ride to restore power to the main complex, allowing us to plug the cord in beneath the statue, bringing our adventures in Home Sweet Home to a close. Now heading back to the start of this area, we can move the camera out of bounds and get a good look at this map. The first thing you'll notice is that although the room we start in is practically identical to the one we loaded into previously, the rest of the orphanage is now loaded in around us. Taking a look out of bounds, there are a few interesting things to look at as well, including one of the power outlets we use to charge the green hand, and a battery that is used to help power this level's doors. On the far side of this map, there are a handful of Hairless Catnaps floating out of bounds as well, including this one that has been hilariously squished downwards. I believe these models are stored down here so that they can be moved into the map during our encounters with Catnap. I'm not sure why this one in particular is flatter than the rest. I'll admit though, seeing them in this state almost makes them less creepy. Almost. As we jump down to the hole in the floor, we'll come across the first wind-up car, and I was curious what this animation looked like in slow motion. As you can see, the tires begin spinning, and the car moves side to side until we release the pull string, where it'll then launch forward, destroying the boxes in its path. It then connects with this concrete rubble, where it stops, and flames slowly begin to grow from the wreckage. Worry not though, the driver seems to be in good shape. After heading to the next floor, we pass through a doorway where we can see Catnap crossing through this corridor. As per usual, they'll leave the player's line of sight before being moved back to the storage location out of bounds. On the same floor, we'll find Kissy Missy sitting in a bedroom staring at a photo. This area is full of drawings depicting Kissy Missy, and though we can't typically pass the barrier placed here, moving the camera, we can get a better look at the photo she is holding. There's also another photo on the table beside her, which is hard to see from far away. She does not move or look at the player, and she remains here until we leave. So majority of the bedrooms in this building can be accessed by the player at some point, which helps in navigating this huge complex. Just across the hall from Kissy Missy, there are a handful of doors that cannot be accessed by the player, and flying beyond them reveals that they are in fact fully modeled bedrooms inside. The boarded up door at the end of this hallway doesn't lead to a kid's room though, and looking beyond it, we'll see that it actually leads to the generator room. There are a handful of doors like this found throughout the rest of the building as well, and you'd never know there was a fully modeled room locked behind most of them during regular gameplay. Considering you cannot access or see inside most of them, I find it a bit odd that the developers chose to flesh them out this way. On the topic of inaccessible doors though, if we move the camera to the top of this building, we can see a balcony containing 4 separate doorways. Each of them has been blocked in some way, and taking a look out of bounds reveals that there's nothing behind them either. Since the player would never reach this area, there's no point in putting anything here. While I was up here, I also want to investigate these holes in the ceiling. While playing through this area, you can see what looks like a room beyond them. But moving the camera up here reveals that there's a roof and 4 walls placed here, but it is not a complete room, nor is there anything inside. Moving on, there's a jump scare that takes place after powering these 2 outlets, where a Catnap plush will drop down in front of us. Just out of sight, this Catnap plush is stored in the corner of the room until we enter, and when the player walks through the doorway, it'll be moved up above, where it then drops down into sight. A simple jump scare, but an effective one. After breaking through yet another barricade, we enter a vent where Catnap can be seen observing us from just beyond a spinning fan blade, and after the player climbs inside, they will quickly move out of view. Viewing this from outside the vent, we can see that they are standing on their back legs, staring at us from inside the generator room. And it's kind of crazy how tall they are. As soon as the player triggers the animation, they will duck out of sight before being moved out of the map entirely. Just ahead, we'll see them again at the end of this hallway, only this time they'll walk into a bedroom where they lean forward and start floating instead of walking. They then refuse to elaborate and vanish without a trace. Glorious! And also terrifying. Once we've completed the generator room's electrical puzzle and taken the lift upstairs, we can now leave through the front door where the cutscene with Kissy Missy and Poppy takes place. Before we trigger this cutscene though, if we fly over to the elevator that is used to restore power to Playcare, we'll find Kissy Missy and Poppy T-posing out of bounds just beneath the lift itself. We'll also see the elevator and just how far its legs stretch into the void below. Now, as this cutscene begins, the models found T-posing below this map will be moved instantly to the front porch, as Kissy appears behind the player and grabs hold of us. As Kissy leans forward to pin us down, Poppy just sort of floats out the concrete steps and into the player's view. This is hilarious to watch from beneath the map, as she just instantly appears and clips to the ground. She is floating just above the ground, and when picked up by Kissy Missy, we can see that they suddenly snap into the next part of their animation. What's pretty unsettling is that these models are programmed to look at the player camera, so when moving around the scene, they'll just continue to follow the camera with their heads. After hitting the big button and turning the power back on, these two will drop us off on the ground before taking the lift up once more, where they will both be unloaded. Kissy will actually return shortly after to wave at the player, and since her programming forces her to stare at the camera, we can move the camera behind her during this animation, which will kind of break things. Her torso will rotate through her body while completely upside down before correcting itself. She then slides backwards and unloads once again. And with that, that's everything I found out of bounds in the Home Sweet Home area in Chapter 3 of Poppy Playtime. And once again, a big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Jump at the bell today as new players, or those who haven't played in the last 6 months, and click my link down below to get an awesome bonus pack. There's quite a bit left to cover in this game, so make sure you're subscribed, that way you'll be notified when my next video releases. Thanks for watching, and cheers.